Teams are losing games on 2-point try attempts, and the roughing the passer penalty is as poorly called as ever. That's how you know the NFL's in midseason form. This is the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. I'm Adam Wright with CJ Medeiros. So I really wasn't kidding about the 2-point tries. I didn't. It was a problem this past season, CJ, where I think we saw it a couple times with the Ravens, and it happened one other time where a 2-point an extra point ties it, but they go for two, and then it blows up in their faces. And now we're seeing it again. But anyways, CJ, how are you anyways?
You know what, Adam?
Guns blazing.
You know what, Adam? I'm fine. Just another day in the world. But hey, I'm on the podcast. I can't complain. I mean, I won't complain, is what I mean. But it's all good over here.
Yeah, same here, man. Same here. In semesters in full swing, and so is the NFL season. And as I mentioned, we're gonna jump right into it and go and talk about the Raiders, who had a sizable lead against the Chiefs for a while. Then the Chiefs just came storming back with Patrick Mahomes leading the charge as usual. The Raiders eventually came back, and big time touchdown play, 48 yards, Devontae Adams from Derek Carr, and it made it a 29-30 game. Extra point ties it. They went for a 2-point conversion. It failed, and I don't believe the Raiders got the ball back. Did they?
I don't think so, no.
So they did not get the ball back, and the Chiefs wound up winning the game by 1 point. When a 2-point conversion ties it. Now, we've been seeing that a little bit in recent years. Sometimes it works, and the coach looks like a genius, and other times it doesn't, and the coach looks like a complete jackass. In this case, Mr. Josh McDaniels has egg in his face right now. So, CJ, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the 2-point conversion try? These aggressive calls late in the game.
Well, Adam, I would like to start a statement by saying this. McDaniels is your problem now, Vegas. Enjoy your screens on 3rd and 10. Anyway, oh boy, it's just
I'll take him over Patricia, though.
Yeah, we have a better record. Funny how that works. Their offense has better weapons than ours, and we have a better record. I just think that's interesting. But either way, I would say that you're talking about the decision making about these aggressive calls late in games. Now, I don't believe I've ever said this on the show, but I have a personal philosophy. There's, obviously in life, there's good decisions and bad decisions. Now, for me personally, you can't take a decision. You can have all the analytics in the world, but you can't take the odds at face value. A decision is only good or bad depending on how it goes. You can disagree to your heart's content. However, my convictions stand firm. And I truly believe it's like there's no such thing as a surefire decision, and the outcome solely predicts whether it was good or bad. And these 2-point tries, they're just a little too risky for my liking, especially when, like you said, an extra point ties the game. It's like you're getting greedy, you're trying to paint yourself as kind of a genius. And in the NFL, especially, like one play can cost you the entire game. And especially like late in the game, if you're taking unnecessary risks, I don't care what the analytics say. That's on you. And if you end up with egg in your face, oh well. And last season, the Baltimore Ravens going for it on 2 or for 2 or going for it on 4th down or anything like that is like unnecessarily risky, and it's literally costing teams games, which is ironic because a lot of our fellow Patriots fans say Bill's coaching scared, he's too conservative. Well, look at the flip side of like people like John Harbaugh or Josh McDaniels. They're too aggressive. Their needless risk taking is costing them games. And as a result, they look like colossal fools, for lack of a, for instead of a much worse word I was going to call them. Adam?
Yeah. I mean, I look at this and I just think when I look at the 2-point conversion, it's something that you should only be doing if you really need to do it. Like if you look at Super Bowl 51, that all those 2-point conversions the Patriots made, no one disagreed with those because that was like undisputedly like you have to do it or else you're done. You're dead. That's exactly what the 2-point conversion is for. Not to go and just do it just needlessly when an extra point ties it. Like if there were an instance in that Super Bowl where an extra point tied it and they went for 2, that would have been stupid. But a 2-point conversion tied it. So they had to. It's just the whole thing is just it's gotten out of hand. And I think it's all the analytics and the sports nerds who are all saying, well, if they make the 2-point conversion, then they win. Then there's a better chance they win the game, or like a lot of it says X amount of times that out of X amount of times that they're going to make it, so therefore it's a good decision. No, it's still a really, really risky decision. It's just needless. You're just putting your team in position to potentially lose almost for your own ego. Because if it works, then you're up on a pedestal. Everyone's thinking, wow, what a ballsy move. He made it. He knew there was something there when he really just took the risk. It was the 2016 season. I believe it was week 1 or week 2, one of the weeks. It was the Oakland Raiders at the time. Jack Del Rio decided to go for 2 with Derek Carr, and he made it, and everyone was praising him for it. It's like, wow, Jack Del Rio's really showing off his offensive skill set. He's really showing that he can do it, and that was really ballsy. This is going to be a great season, and it was a great season for the Raiders that year. They went 12-4. Derek Carr looked like a stud, and so did Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree, Latavius Murray at the time. That was a great offense. I took advantage of it through fantasy football. But either way, it was not like he only looked good because it worked. And good for them that it worked. But if that failed, then the narrative would be completely flipped. So you are right. Like it is turned on to if it works, then it was a good move. If it doesn't, then it was a stupid move. It's just a risky and needless decision. Like it's unnecessary. Go for the tie and give yourself a chance to win afterwards. Like I understand you're going against Patrick Mahomes, who's having a great season, but you have to keep yourself in it, and you have to show faith in your team that you can hold against Patrick Mahomes. That Derek Carr can march down the field and make another drive like that with Devontae Adams and Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow at your disposal. Like you just can't do that. And here's another side note. This kind of goes off from our narrative of the 2-point try, but Patrick Mahomes might be my pick for league MVP this year.
Yeah, same.
With what he's working with, 4 touchdown passes. I believe that's 15 to this point in the season to 2 picks. Yeah, I'll have to look at the stats, but he's been incredible. Yeah. It's like he hasn't missed a beat. He might be better than he was last year. And he had more weapons last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 100% agree. And as someone that has him in fantasy, I can say I think he deserves it.
So you do have bias in this. You do. I don't have bias. I don't even. I just think he's doing great. I'm respecting the greatness. I am.
Well, I am great too. I'm just saying I personally can attest.
Yeah. All right. Well, we do want to move on, and we're going to talk about So this is kind of something that's gone around, like it's a sort of around a few different NFL games. We're not just covering one matchup or one game, but each team in the NFC East, outside of Washington, sorry Washington, has been just really overachieving here, doing incredible. And we're going to break this division down and talk about the possibility of this being the best division in football. We'll get to this next. You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown.
You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast. Adam Wright with CJ Medeiros here. And so the NFC East really flexed its muscles this week. Again, outside of Washington. I think they're 1-4. And I really feel bad in excluding them from this, but the rest of this division has just been so incredible. So the Giants started off, they won in London the other day on Sunday. And then you had the Eagles, who continued their brilliance, starting off with their 5-0 start. And Cooper Rush and company on the Cowboys pulled off the upset. I don't care about the record. Sorry, it's just early in the season against the Rams. And all of a sudden, Cowboys are 4-1. Eagles are 5-0. The Giants are 4-1. Holy crap. How is this happening? CJ, are you buying into this potentially being the best division in the NFL?
Oh, that's a tricky one. But am I buying into it? Yes and no. Yes, for the records. There's an old saying that says you are what your record says you are. And frankly, it's something I disagree with, because I always say, you could be greater than the sum of your parts. For example, the Giants, everyone and their mother knows the Giants are fool's gold. They are far and away the worst 4-1 team, excuse me. And if you pull up, their quarterback Daniel Jones's stats, he has 848 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks over 5 games. But it's like, he's not going to win you anything in a shootout. They're basically... They're using him like New England's using Bailey Zappi right now. And Daniel Jones is not the guy. He's like the game manager's game manager. He hasn't thrown for 3,000 yards since his rookie year. And I don't see him as the long-term option. And the Giants' whole offense depends solely on how Saquon Barkley does. They're probably going to lose if he has a horrible game, but if he's lighting it up, then I think they're going to be fine. And the Cowboys are an interesting group because Cooper Rush, as you know, backup quarterback, comes in for Dak and is undefeated as a starter thus far. He has a 61% completion percentage for 839 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Once again, more of a game manager, but it's the Cowboys' defense that for some reason has come alive and bottled up the Rams. Then there's Philly. Philly's undefeated, and that roster is legitimate. You have Jalen Hurts, who shows that he could be the guy, and you have a scary receiver duo of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and a tenacious defense as well. And then there's just poor, pitiful Washington, the commies, I like to call them. But But to answer your question, Adam, after I just gave a breakdown there, boy. I mean, in terms of the record, they're the best, but in terms of talent, I disagree.
So I'm going to hold off on it going on, and I know I make the question banners and I make all the questions in the segment, but I thought it's just something that we could explore. But
So
I
you're
want
not
to
even going
hold
to
on.
answer your own question. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes,
Wow.
because I just want to bring it to light, But
You
I
sound
think this
like
is.
No,
I
I'm
think
not
this
gonna
is.
finish that.
I think this is something that I'm open to. I'm intrigued by the idea that the NFC East going forward could be the best division in football. It's really early, but when you start 4-1 and you're the Giants, I understand they haven't beaten the best teams. They started off by beating the Titans, who I believe are 3-2 now, correct? Like they've actually figured things out.
I think it's a bit early to say they figured things out, but I guess they're maybe turning a corner, kind of.
Well, okay. For argument's sake, record-wise, they figured it out.
Sure.
You got the Panthers, who have their own issues they're figuring out. So they lost to the Cowboys. That's their only loss. They beat the Bears. Nothing to say there. Here's the one that's intriguing. The Green Bay Packers they beat. The Packers. That's a pretty good. Listen, as much as we love to talk about how they don't have nearly as much firepower as they have in the past, that's a very lethal defense. They have talent all around the field, especially in that secondary. They have a very good running back duo in AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones. And then we can't forget about the quarterback they have back there. So the fact that they were able to beat that team and come all the way back, I'm not sure what the comeback was, but I believe they were down a fair amount of points at one point in the game. I'm bringing up, they were down 20 to 10 at one point. So 10 points at this point it was midway through the third quarter where they started to mount a comeback, and they held Green Bay scoreless. So Aaron Rodgers and company, and they were able to score on that Green Bay defense, which is pretty stingy. So I am intrigued by the idea that the Giants can play. And it's not like we have to rely on Daniel Jones to pull these things off. They have a pretty decent defense, the Giants have. Nice front seven that was bullying Aaron Rodgers all morning. And we'll say morning because we're in the Eastern time zone. And I believe that it's 1:00 in London when at that point in the time. But I do let's hold on that team, because they're built on kind of defense and running the ball with Saquon Barkley, who's remains healthy to this point. And you do have a pretty good, dare I say, pretty good wide receiver core when it's healthy. And notice I say when it's healthy, because when it's healthy, it is pretty talented. I like Kadarius Toney. I know Sterling Shepard's done for the year. Darius Slayton's always shown flashes of brilliance. And on top of that, you have Kenny Golladay, who did have some pretty good days in Detroit. Granted, he was playing with Matthew Stafford, but good days. The Eagles, and so going on to the other teams, the Eagles, they look really good. They look like the team to beat right now in the NFC, and they're beating teams like it's nothing almost. And I'm pretty sold on that team at this point of the year. I know it's early, but I'm sold. And the Cowboys, that's another team that I wouldn't say I'm sold on as a contender, but I'm getting around to the point where I think that this is at least a wild card team, playoff team at least, because they're winning games on defense and running the ball, which is actually a fairly sustainable way of winning games. You let your quarterback not turn the ball over. And you have weapons in the passing game where if you do need to throw it, you can do it. You have CeeDee Lamb. You have Michael Gallup. You have Dalton Schultz. Those are all pieces that you can throw to and can come through in timely fashion, as we know as Patriots fans looking back at CeeDee Lamb's game against, oh boy, we very nearly had that game, but we won't go in depth with that.
Jalen
but this
Mills.
is a division. This is a division that I wouldn't say I'm buying into it quite yet, but I'm intrigued by how they're playing. And they do have some talent if you look closer at the team. I know it's easy to just clown on the Giants and say it's a paper 4-1, but they do have some talent there. Saquon Barkley, when he's healthy and is the real deal, and he showed that. That defense, led by Kayvon Thibodeau, and that the rest of that front seven really was performing. And they do have pieces to throw to when they're healthy. So I do like this division, and I wouldn't rule out the possibility this could continue. I wouldn't.
I mean, I'm not ruling it out, but mark my words, if Saquon puts together a string of bad games or goes down, the offense is done. Their season's over.
Right.
Like that entire team literally hinges on Saquon Barkley's ability to produce. And you know what? And unlike you, I will actually say that this is a paper 4-1. I mean, they're not beating anyone good except, I mean, do we even count Green Bay anymore? I mean, they just have Rodgers and some decent pieces on defense, but I'm not sure.
I think with the way that they're built, as long as they play to the script, the game flow, as if you will, then yes, I think this is a team that you can call at the very least competitive, especially since you have Aaron Rodgers back there.
All right, fair enough. You know, well, as far as the Giants go, I'd say let's just reopen this case a few weeks from now, and we'll see where we stand.
Right, because if they lose the next 3 games, then we could throw this potential take out the window.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm sure I'm sure the Cowboys will be in the mix at that point. And the Eagles, I am sold on. My 2-year-old pup is rummaging around. I hope he doesn't do anything. Oh, he's gotten into something. Jesus, Doug. All right. Well, we do want to move on. And we'll put this to rest until later on in the season. But the roughing the passer penalty, and it's the question of the way it is called has arisen again. So there were a couple of questionable calls this past weekend, and I wanted to touch on that and how we feel about the way it's called and what it means for the rest of the season. We'll get to that next. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
Welcome back to the Fumblerooski podcast. Adam Wright here with CJ Medeiros. So we've moved on to the next portion of this show where we're going to go over a couple of these roughing the passer calls that happened. The first happening with Tom Brady, where he was thrown to the ground and it looked like a clean sack, but they called it roughing the passer anyways. It was pretty, normal. Nothing happened. And everyone turned around and said, well, look at this. It's Tom Brady getting away with calls again. He's getting calls. Then on Monday Night Football, it happened yet again. Chris Jones the defensive tackle. Chris Jones breaks through the offensive line and sacks Derek Carr, stripping the ball away. Now, at this point, he has the ball in his hand by the time it was called. And Ian Rappaport, some insider tweeted, this might be the first time ever where a roughing the passer has been called when the ball is in the defender's hands. So, CJ, what do you think about how the roughing the passer penalty is being managed here?
Now, let me tell you something. I'm going to cross sports real quick. Now, as you may know, I'm a basketball guy as well. And the roughing the passer call is getting to be as ridiculous and downright asinine as a technical foul in the NBA. And if you watch the NBA, then you know their technical foul situation's out of control. And frankly, I don't think it's really any surprise that we're seeing an uptick in stupid roughing the passer calls after Tua Tagovailoa gets his brains turned into mashed potatoes. It's the NFL saying, oh, hey, yeah, we care. Here's a flag. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know, but it wouldn't shock me. And furthermore, I really thought it was just the ref showing favoritism to like Tom Brady. And, but they also do that for Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. But they did to Derek Carr. And I'm noticing that, like, you can't touch the quarterback anymore. And like you said, it couldn't have been a roughing the passer because the ball was already in the defender's hands. And it's like now they have all these rules like, oh, you can't put all your body weight on the quarterback. You can't hit him below the knees while he's in the pocket. And now it's like you can't hit him below the knees when he's out of the pocket. They made that change. And now it's soon it's going to be like you have to count to 7 Mississippi before you blitz. It's like you can't make eye contact with the quarterback. But this is where we're going at them. And this may sound extreme, but is it really extreme? I personally don't think so. And the NFL and the Players Association and all the odds and ends there need to sit down and say, all right, this is roughing the passer and this is not. I mean, you think they'd do that, but the fact that it's so up to interpretation aggravates me. It's just, and like I said, and then you have Jerome Boger, who, keep in mind, was literally had his crew ejected from the playoffs for his bungling of the Bengals and Raiders game. He literally said, about the Tom Brady roughing the passer, was like, oh yeah, well, there was intent to injure. Or it was like, it was unnecessary. How do you know that? You don't.
All right. So I brought up a little stat sheet here of these 4 NFL quarterbacks who are in the league currently, and the roughing the passer penalties that have been called since 2012. So keep in mind, 2 of these players weren't even in the league. So Tom Brady in 235 career games, 27 roughing the passer penalties. Aaron Rodgers in 216 career games, 28 roughing the passer penalties. Patrick Mahomes in 79 career games. Keep in mind, he just got in the league in 2017. Didn't start until 2018. 20 roughing the passer penalties.
Good Lord.
Josh Allen in 73 career games, 24 roughing the passer penalties. So the roughing the passer penalty, it started off with with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers with protecting their star players. Now that Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen have taken over the league, and Brady and Rodgers is still there, but now that Mahomes and Allen are the faces of the league, it's getting worse than ever. Yep. And especially since the 2018 season, that's when this really started coming up, where there were issues. Remember when Clay Matthews was having this trouble?
Oh my God. Yeah. Because he put his body weight on the quarterback or something equally stupid.
And it was happening all year with all defenders throughout the league. Mm-hmm. And I remember there was the AFC Championship game where it was just inconsistently called. There was one play where a player barely touched Patrick Mahomes, and then they made it they barely touched Tom Brady, and they called it. And then there was one play where Patrick Mahomes nearly got killed, and they didn't call it. And then it happened all throughout that season. And it's just such, like, you got to be consistent with it. If you're going to call whenever he gets killed, or if you're going to call whenever he barely gets touched, I'd say that's fine. Just pick a side. I would rather it be when he gets killed because that's actually when it matters. But that's just me. But at least stay consistent with it because it's really causing issues within like the league and their officials are losing credibility. And you're going to get to the point where it's like the NBA with officials calling their superstars on traveling because you see it all the time and it never gets called.
Yeah.
It almost never gets called. And when they do, you got the LeBron Jameses and the Giannis Antetokounmpos of the world having the audacity to argue with it. Like this dude ran halfway across the court, and LeBron James thinks it's a civil right to go ahead and go and question a call that you violated. The whole thing is just ridiculous, and it's happening now with the quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, Adam, I agree. And here's something that really burns me about this. Are you ready? It's not evenly applied. If you're someone like Geno Smith, a defender could take your head off and the NFL would not give a singular damn. But if you breathe on someone like Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, you're lucky if you don't get suspended. It's just, and it's the favoritism that I hate among all else. And yeah, that's just my rant of the day.
Oh, trust me. I have plenty to rant about. Luckily, with both of these calls, I really didn't have me personally. I didn't have a dog in this fight. I don't care much for what Tom Brady does. He's already, even as a Brady fan, he's already accomplished enough regardless of whether he wins or loses this year. And he does have a chance. Not the strongest team he's had in Tampa, but in this Raiders game, so it was called against the Chiefs, but the Chiefs won anyways, as we covered on a couple segments ago. Pretty dumb decision by the Raiders, but we've already covered that as well. But I don't know. I mean, unless it happens in a big game, I'm not going to be standing up ranting about this, but it is something that I wanted to look at because this is just it's just stupid. It's really bad. But do you have anything else to cover before we reach our Fumblerooski fantasy fix?
No, I do not.
All right. Well, we are in fact ready to move to our fantasy football segment known as the Fumblerooski fantasy fix. We're going to get to some waiver wire pickups this time around as the waiver period is almost here. So don't go anywhere. You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. It's caught! Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins! Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
This is the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. Adam Wright here with CJ Medeiros. We have reached the Fumblerooski Fantasy Fix, where we're going to cover anything fantasy football. On Fridays, of course, we have our stardom sit-ems. But on Tuesdays, such as today, we have our waiver wire pickups. So we're going to jump right into it and start with running backs. We got Latavius Murray, who was just freshly picked up by the Broncos. And we also have Kenneth Walker for the Seahawks now that Rashad Penny has gone down. And for Latavius Murray, Javonte Williams is gone, which leaves only Melvin Gordon back there and Mike Boone. But I love me some Latavius Murray. I've been loving that guy for the past few years. Whenever he's a backup and he steps in for the RB1, he always does great things. So go and pick up Latavius Murray, Kenneth Walker as well. Then going on to wide receivers, we're going to hit on Randall Cobb. And with so much uncertainty, and I feel like we've gone over a few different Green Bay wide receivers for these waiver pickups, but with so much uncertainty in that wide receiver core for the Green Bay Packers, anyone who puts up a good performance, go pick them up, because God forbid they pick up some consistency and you don't get them, then you have egg on your face because you didn't pick the right Green Bay wide receiver. There's also Jacoby Myers, who just came back for New England, and he showed out with Bailey Zappi. Go pick him up. We also have, for tight end, we have Hayden Hurst, who's starting to gain some steam with Joe Burrow as his new quarterback. And we also have Evan Engram for the Jaguars, who is doing some great things, the former first rounder. And so is Hayden Hurst. So go pick either of those guys up. Now heading over to our quarterback streamers. We have Geno Smith versus Arizona. That is a juicy matchup against a Cardinals secondary that continues to struggle against quarterbacks. And Geno Smith has been red hot this season, throwing to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And the next guy is Jimmy Garoppolo with a nice matchup. Jimmy Garoppolo is always a nice streaming option if he has a good matchup. He's serviceable. He has a nice high floor, I'll say. Not the highest ceiling, but if you need a quarterback, go get Jimmy Garoppolo and Geno Smith. We also have, for defense and special teams streamers, we have the Commanders defense at Chicago, and we have the Bengals at New Orleans. So take advantage of any defense going against Chicago, because that offensive line is so bad, and Justin Fields continues to turn over the ball. Until that stops, keep starting Chicago's defense. Also, Bengals against New Orleans. Turns out Jameis Winston, his turnover issues are the same as are returning to what they have been for most of the season. So there you have it. That is our Fumblerooski fantasy fix with our waiver wire pickups. But CJ, do you have anything to add before we move on to our Fumblerooski fan box?
No, I do not.
All right. Well, we are going to move on where we talk about this. At this time around, we're going to talk about some of the most disappointing players, the underachievers in individual performances so far this season. We'll hit on that next, and your answers, and give our reactions. Don't go anywhere. This is the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. I'm Adam Wright with CJ Medeiros. We have reached the Fumblerooski fan box, where we post a question filter on our Instagram every Monday, and you can respond with hot takes, questions, and more, and we will discuss it and give you a shout out on our podcast. Respond to next week's fan box question to be featured on our show. Now, the question of the week was, which player has underachieved the most this season? So a lot of good answers, starting with Cola DJ, who said James Conner. And I would agree. That offense is, as a whole, is really underachieving. Kind of a middling Arizona team where we thought they would be pretty good. And
Kingsbury.
James Conner is in the epicenter of that, who had a great season, but he was a little touchdown dependent last season.
Yeah.
Going on, we have Cash Withers, who said CeeDee Lamb. Here's what I'll say. He's not underachieving. Because when you have
quarterback is Cooper Rush.
That's my point. You got Cooper Rush throwing to you. And Cooper Rush has been pretty good throwing to CeeDee Lamb. He does lean on him a lot, but when you succeed like that with a backup, I've got to say, not too bad.
Yeah.
Not too bad. He's been pretty good with CeeDee Lamb. Patrick Williver said Kyle Pitts by 1 million. And I would agree. His yardage is way down. He is not playing the same as he was, and he hasn't improved on his touchdown production, which I predicted would improve.
Yeah, I remember that, Adam.
Despite his regressed quarterback play over there, I didn't think that would be an issue. I had seen other tight ends be able to succeed despite a lack of quarterback play. We saw George Kittle back in 2018, I believe, where he had 1,300 yards and like around 10 to 13 touchdown receptions, and I thought he was pretty good with Nick Mullins, and CJ Beathard. Yeah. And it worked out then, but whatever. Yeah. I'll call it a cold it ain't over till it's over.
Kyle 10-catch Pitts, they call him.
Yeah. Tyson Tate said Allen Robinson. And I would agree.
Does Stafford hate him or something? Because he only throws to Cooper Kupp.
Either they have some issues with money and girl problems, or who knows. But it could be he's not getting open, but he's really not being utilized in that offense. And you got to wonder if, especially since the turnovers are really racking up for Stafford early on in the season, and the losses are starting to rack up. Maybe Stafford's leaning on Cooper Kupp a little too much. So much so that he forgets the rest of the offense even exists. But let's see, where's my spot? All right. Nick Norman said Baker or Russ, take your pick. And you would be right with both of them.
Yeah.
Mayfield, man. Baker Mayfield and and Russell Wilson, and we got a lot of picks for both of them, so we'll have plenty of time. We'll have plenty of time to touch on that. Secret Weapon Consulting said Russell Wilson, and I guess we'll touch on it now since
Broncos
someone
country,
else said
let's ride.
We touched on it on our last episode. This team is just, they seem too fat and happy. They feel like it seems like they felt like they were going to show up and become contenders. And I understand that they might think that because they do have a lot of talent, but talent means jack if you don't do anything with it and you don't work. A famous man known as Kevin Durant once said, hard work beats talent when talent does not work hard. And Russell Wilson is swimming around in all his money saying Broncos country, let's ride. and thinking of other new cool catchphrases to say during press conferences. Derek Hool said Kyle Pitts. Yeah. Like I said, I hope he, and part of it's not his fault because the quarterback play is pretty bad.
Yeah, but 10 catches all the season, man. I don't know about that.
Through 5 weeks. That's not good. So good pick. Eli Turner said, please force Russ to cook.
Broncos country. That's right.
Maybe that will be part of, how there's these contracts are starting to have these requirements.
Yeah.
Require Russ to cook.
Yeah,
Russ,
exactly.
You have to work hard. Work as if you feel like you're going to be traded tomorrow, like you were in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Because apparently they were trying to trade him the whole time. So no wonder why he felt like he had to work so hard, because he felt like he could be putting on a different uniform any day now. Now he has that security and he has that fire is out. Ian Mulhern said Matt Ryan, and that would be correct. I thought that the Colts could be a dark horse team to contend in the AFC, especially since Matt Ryan has a track record of leading some playoff teams. This was probably the best roster he's had in years, and he's done nothing with it so far. In fact, he's probably one of the worst pieces of it so far. Doesn't he lead the league in interceptions and fumbles?
Yeah, something like that. And
it's
Adam,
not good.
Yeah, but look, Adam, here's the thing. Indy, this is an indictment on you. You keep trying to put a Band-Aid on like a severed limb Like you have to find a franchise quarterback. You've had bridge quarterbacks since like what, 2017, 2018?
Since Andrew Luck in his
Yeah.
last season. And even
That whole
before
team
then,
is
there were a
bridge
couple of years.
quarterbacks.
And even before that, there were a couple of years where they were trying to stuff like Jacoby Brissett and name the other backup quarterback they had while they were waiting for Andrew Luck to get healthy. So they've been having trouble for most of the 2010s and now into the 2020s. So that's becoming an issue for the Colts. And I don't know. I just thought this time would be different because it was Matt Ryan, and I thought maybe it wouldn't be like Peyton Manning on the Broncos, but it would be like close to it because it's Matt Ryan and he is a pretty good passer at his prime. Slater Griffith? Is it Slater Griffith? It's Slater _G_12. And I know you've pronounced his name yourself. Just it's hard to look into the names because we get so many responses.
Yeah.
Is it Slater Griffith?
I think it might be Griffith. I don't know. I don't have it in front of me.
Something like that. He said A-Rod is nothing without Devontae. And I touched on this earlier on in the episode. In his defense, it's very tough to play without any targets as a quarterback. It's tough. Even in our years watching Tom Brady as a New England Patriot, when he in 2013, in let's say we'll say 2005, 2009, when you have trouble with targets, you're not going to be as good. We saw it in 2019 with Tom Brady. When you have targets versus when you do, the stats are just night and day. And it doesn't mean you're not a good quarterback. You can still figure things out, as Rodgers clearly is, because they're 3-2 and we're 3-1 until they lost at the last second to a team that's a gritty Giants team so far. I know you think it's paper. I don't know. Like, he's doing the best he can with what he has. And I do have a little bit more respect for him that he's buying into a team that doesn't have as many weapons. Because usually you see him crying over the fact that he doesn't. And now he's doing his best with what he has. And the team's just not designed for Rodgers to put up statistics. And I am applauding him for being okay with that, because usually he's not.
Yeah.
All right. And Robert Shelley said Baker. I was rooting for him, but he went from badass to ass real quick.
Isn't that the truth?
All right. Listen, I was never a big Baker guy, and I guess I bought into him a little bit before last season, but if this doesn't confirm that he's not really the real deal, that he's going to another team that also has talent and is not doing anything with it, then I don't know what does.
Well, I mean, his coach is terrible.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe Matt Rule, and now he's fired, so let's see what happens now. And maybe the offensive line, because they don't really have too much there, but Christian McCaffrey is healthy for an extended period of time now, which feels weird, because usually by this time at like week 3, he's hurt. And he's done until like halfway through the season. Then he plays 3 games, then he gets hurt again. Yep. And so we'll see. We'll see with him. Brian Cody said Justin Fields.
The Ohio State QB curse is real.
And you could say that Justin Fields is you could say that like he hasn't been very good. And you could also say that it's because you didn't really have many expectations for him to begin with. Because even if this kid can play, he's not going to get the chance to throw before he gets a defender in his face. I mean, that's what happened a couple of games last year.
Yeah.
Myles Garrett was in his face and sacked him 6 times. It was unbelievable. But yeah, that is a good pick. Diego Larios said not a player, but Zach Taylor and his play calling. His play calling was an issue last year. But the good thing was Joe Burrow and company were able to overshadow it, and the defense was able to be serviceable and win them some games. Now they're not winning games. And Zach Taylor's play calling is sticking out like a sore thumb now.
Yeah,
Whereas
because the
before,
defense
nobody
has
saw it.
improved, and so's the O-line. The coaching. Can you imagine if somebody like Mike Tomlin or Bill Belichick had that team?
Yep. All right. Diego Huertas said, by far, Russell Wilson is not even a question. It isn't a question that he hasn't underachieved. It's been bad. And he's always been a guy who I've respected. I loved his work ethic. He's like he was a really gritty guy in Seattle. He was never the best quarterback, but he played his heart out. And he never backed down from a fight. And he worked hard with some really lacking, for lack of a better term, Seahawks teams, where they really didn't have too much. I remember a couple of years, Tyler Lockett was their top receiver. And no disrespect towards Tyler Lockett. He's maybe a low-end wide receiver 1. Maybe. He's more of a wide receiver 2. But he worked with that and was able to bring them to a playoff spot. They didn't win any games, and they lost to the Cowboys in the playoffs, which does say a little bit because he lost to the Cowboys in the playoffs. But he made that happen. And now he was able to do more with less in Seattle. Now he has more, and he's doing less with more, which is not a good look on his part.
Well, Adam, you know what they say? Broncos country. Let's ride.
Jesus, if I hear that one more freaking time from you, and it won't be the last for the rest of the season. It's only going to get louder.
Oh, yeah.
Jack Briel said Najee Harris.
And that Pittsburgh O-line's doing him no favors.
That offensive line sucks.
It's like having to run through quicksand. Jesus.
You also don't have Ben Roethlisberger peppering him with targets and bringing his PPR status like through the roof. I remember there was a game he had like 19 catches and he put up like 30 points or something like that. It was incredible. But, there's no Roethlisberger to do that. It's all Kenny Pickett and, Mitch Trubisky. But it's still a good pick. I mean, he hasn't been great. A lot of it's not his fault, but still. Grayson Mortimer said Allen Robinson. Again, get this guy some targets and you might start winning games, Rams. And I am looking at you, blanking on the head coach's name, and I shouldn't
Sean McVay.
I'm looking at you, Sean McVay, as you are one of the best young coach game, and you are yet to utilize. You are allowing your quarterback Matthew Stafford to just force feed Cooper Kupp, and I get it. Cooper Kupp had an incredible year, but if you continue to force feed him, then you're not going to win games because everyone knows where the ball's going. And that becomes a problem when defenses can guess what you're doing.
Yep.
John Warren said Raiders, but Derek Carr mostly. Yeah.
Josh McDaniels. I just said that you're gonna have
I'd
Vegas.
say Josh McDaniels too.
He's just not a good coach, no matter how much talent he has.
But even so, I feel like Derek Carr should have a lot less interceptions to this point.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He has 4 picks and only 8 touchdown passes. He has 1,200 yards, which is good. He always racks up the yardage. But when you have Devontae Adams to add into a pass catching corps that already had Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow, then you start to look at the quarterback and you think, what's going on, dude? Especially when you have Josh Jacobs, who's having a kind of a career year, low key. All right. And so our last response is Jad Noah Man. No, let me know in the comments what, or in the DM. I know a lot of you guys hop in the DMs after I post the fan boxes. You said Russ. So we can do our last Russell Wilson rant of the night before we end our show, because that is our last response. But anything else you want to add? Because we've crapped all over him quite a bit.
I'm not going to say it. I'm not. Oh, who am I kidding? I'm going to say it. Broncos country, let's ride. Sorry. Huh?
You were fighting demons when you're fighting not to say that.
I'm sorry. It's so funny how confident he was, and then he came in and just rested on his laurels. I mean, he doesn't care. It's so blatantly obvious he doesn't care. And now Broncos country, let's ride is just like the mantra of just underachieving.
And it looks bad that he continues to say it.
Yeah, he does. He was so cavalier after losing. Like I honest to God wonder if he cares.
He said after asked about what he feels about the team struggling so far and underachieving, he said, "No, I'm having a lot of fun right now."
Well,
He literally said that. He
yeah.
literally admitted at that point. That's basically admitting that he thinks that losing is fun. If you are, and this is what separates
like that, I imagine.
And this is what separates him from and I'll say Aaron Rodgers too, the Aaron Rodgers, the Josh Allens, the Tom Bradys,
the Mahomeses
of the world. This is what separates him from all those guys because they hate losing more than they love winning. They think if they lose, they can't fathom losing. And I look at Tom Brady more than the other three guys that we mentioned, especially Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure he loves winning, and I'm sure he hates losing. I mean, he gets bitchy when he doesn't win, but like still, I don't see Russell Wilson feeling this way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even Devontae Adams, who left Aaron Rodgers, and I'm not condoning his behavior at all, but he slammed his helmet down. He pushed a guy down because they lost the game.
Yeah.
And the team's 1-4. At that point, a lot of guys would just turtle and just be like, oh well, this guy was pissed. And Russell Wilson's saying, let's ride. He just seems so, oh boy. That's
yeah.
I hope he gets his head screwed on straight because this guy is too likable to not to be hated like this. I don't know. All right. But any other thoughts before we end the show tonight? Another very long fan box segment, but we do enjoy you guys' responses.
Oh yeah.
But nothing on your end?
Broncos country, let's ride.
All right. That'll do it for us tonight. Thank you for listening to us. We have new episodes out on Tuesdays and Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have all our episodes available on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and so much more. Also, be sure to follow our Instagram at Fumblerooski_podcast to keep up with our podcast and the latest coverage on the NFL. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Over and out.